I never knew children could testify against their parents, not until Jesus took me to a place in hell where every child's cry became fire. I heard a little voice screaming, "Mummy, why did you fight so much?" Another whispered, "Daddy, that you scared me every day." And Jesus said to me, "Nadine, in eternity, the cries of children become witnesses." That was the moment I realized. Hell has a courtroom where every child's tear is recorded, and what I saw next shook me to my core. My name is Sister Nadine Abena, and what I'm about to share is not a dream. It is a judgment I witnessed with my own eyes. It began on a quiet Sunday evening. I had just finished praying in my room when I felt a heavy presence enter the atmosphere. Not evil, but terrifyingly holy. Suddenly, my heart began to beat uncontrollably, my vision blurred. The room around me started to fade like smoke drifting away. I tried to stand, but my legs felt like stone. A whisper filled the room, gentle but filled with authority. "Fear not, Nadine. I have come to show you what many parents will answer for." Before I could speak, the ground beneath me cracked open, not physically, but spiritually. It was as if another world was pulling me downward. My spirit began to leave my body. I saw myself standing above the bed, motionless, while my soul was carried into a tunnel of deep darkness. The deeper we went, the louder the cries became. Not adult cries, not demonic screams, but the fragile, heartbreaking cries of children. I covered my ears, but the voices pierced through my hands. "Daddy, why didn't you ever hug me?" "Mommy, every night you fought, I couldn't sleep." "I was afraid of you, always afraid." Each cry felt like a knife in my chest. Then a bright light appeared ahead of me. I knew instantly it was the Lord. He stood before a massive gate burning with flames that moved like living tongues. But the fire was not red. It was a deep, sorrowful blue. Jesus looked at me with eyes full of pain and said, "Nadine, many parents think I judge only their actions, but I also judge the wounds they leave on the little ones I gave them." He pointed toward the burning gate. Behind it, the cries grew louder, echoes of tiny voices calling for help, voices no one listened to on earth. As Jesus touched the gate, it slowly opened with a sound like thunder. A wave of heat rushed over me. But the heat was not what shook me. It was the sight, inside a courtroom, a fiery courtroom, where children stood as witnesses, and the parents who ignored them were now facing their tears. Jesus said, "This is the first chamber, and you must see it." As Jesus stepped through the gate, I followed him, and instantly a violent heat hit my face. The atmosphere felt heavy, thick, like the air itself was grieving. Before I could adjust my eyes to the burning darkness, I heard it, screaming. Not demonic screams, not adult cries, but the echo of a child shouting, "Stop! Stop! Please! Stop! Fighting!" The moment the cry echoed, a burst of blue fire shot across the chamber. My body trembled. My heart felt like it was splitting in half. Jesus looked at me and said, "This is the chamber of parents who fought in front of their children, those who turned their homes into battlefields." As my eyes adjusted, I saw them, men and women trapped inside circles of fire. But they weren't just burning. They were reliving their arguments. Every insult they ever shouted at their spouse, every curse word, every slammed door, every violent night. All of it replayed in the air like living shadows. Each argument formed dark smoke that wrapped around them like chains. One man stood shaking violently as shadows of his past screamed around him. "You're useless! Get out of my house! I regret marrying you!" Every word turned into a blade of fire that pierced his body. I cried, "Lord, why do their own words attack them?" Jesus answered, "Because the words they released in anger became seeds, and in eternity, every seed must bear fruit." Suddenly, a small figure appeared behind the man. A little boy, no older than 7, wearing a torn shirt. His tiny voice shook as he said, "Daddy, every time you shouted at Mummy, I felt as if my heart was breaking." The man screamed, not from the fire but from the pain of hearing his child's voice. The boy continued, "You never apologized. You never cared how scared I was." With each sentence, blue fire erupted beneath the father's feet. He fell to the ground, weeping uncontrollably. Then I saw another scene, a woman standing inside a ring of fire, her face twisted with regret. A little girl stood in front of her, whispering, "Mummy, you always said Daddy was worthless, and now I grew up thinking all men were dangerous." The woman screamed in horror, begging the girl to forgive her. But Jesus leaned toward me and said, "Forgiveness was possible on earth, but in judgment children do not lie. Their hearts speak the truth they carried for years." I felt my knees weaken. My chest tightened with sorrow. Because this chamber wasn't about physical abuse alone. It was the emotional destruction, the broken atmosphere, the toxic environment parents created, all while believing the children were too young to understand. Jesus lifted his hand, and suddenly, the entire chamber grew silent. He said, "Parents think the home is theirs to do as they please, but every child is an assignment from heaven, and I judge how they were shaped." He pointed to a burnt wall where words appeared like fire. Your child was watching. Your child was listening. Your child was breaking. Tears filled my eyes. "Lord," I asked, "why do the children's voices become fire?" Jesus replied, "Because the tears of children are not forgotten. Every cry becomes a testimony." Just as he spoke, the chamber rumbled. A massive door formed at the far end, glowing with a pale white flame. Jesus rested his hand on my shoulder. "Nadine," he said softly, "the next chamber will reveal something even more painful." My heart dropped, because if this was just the beginning, what lay ahead was unimaginable. As we approached the next chamber, the air grew colder, not the cold of winter, but the cold of loneliness. A faint sound echoed through the corridor, not screaming, not shouting, but soft, heartbreaking sobs, the kind of sobs a child cries alone at night when no one comes to comfort them. Jesus slowed his steps, and his voice became heavy. "This chamber is for parents who were present in the house, but absent in the hearts of their children." When the door opened, a wave of sorrow crashed against my spirit so strongly I almost collapsed. Inside, I saw adults, men and women, curled on the ground, weeping like abandoned children. But around them were floating images, memories, moments of their children trying to reach them. A little boy holding a drawing, smiling proudly. "Daddy, look what I made!" The father in the memory walked past him, phone in hand, barely noticing. A little girl tugging on her mother's dress. "Mummy, can you play with me?" The mother waved her away, too busy chatting with friends online. Every ignored moment was replaying in the air, and every replay became a fresh wound. Suddenly, a child's voice echoed from above. "You were there, but you never saw me." And a burst of pale blue fire fell upon a man sitting in the corner. He screamed not from physical pain, but from the emotional agony of realizing what he had done. The child appeared, a little boy holding a teddy bear with one arm missing. He whispered, "Mommy hugged me once, but she hugged her phone every day." Each word became a sharp wind that pierced his parents' souls. I covered my mouth, fighting back tears. Jesus turned to me and said, "Many parents believe providing food and paying school fees is enough. But children were designed to be loved, seen, heard, and held." Then he pointed to a woman kneeling in fire, crying the name of her daughter. A teenage girl appeared, tears in her eyes. She whispered, "Mom, I told you I was sad. I told you I was hurting, but you kept saying you were tired." The woman screamed, begging her child to forgive her, but the girl continued, You always had energy for everyone else, but never for me." Blue flames rose from the ground, wrapping around the mother like a cocoon of sorrow. Jesus faced me, his voice trembling with grief. Emotional neglect is silent abuse. It wounds a child's identity. It cripples their confidence. It plants seeds of rejection that grow into adulthood. Every word cut like a sword. Then I saw a man banging on an invisible wall, trying desperately to reach his daughter. She appeared on the other side, her eyes empty. She spoke with a voice that shattered me. "I cried in the bathroom every night. I needed you. You never came." The man fell to the ground, writhing in agony as the walls slowly pushed him back into the fire. Jesus lifted his hand and every memory vanished. Silence filled the chamber. Then he said, "Parents believe children forget, but my angels record every tear." He turned away, and the door at the end of the chamber opened by itself. The sound that came from inside was darker, heavier, and more terrifying than anything I had heard. A sound not of sorrow, but of fear. Jesus said, "Nadine, the next chamber will reveal the parents who raised their children in fear. This is the most painful chamber." My heart began to beat violently, because if emotional neglect was this heartbreaking, the next chamber would be unbearable. We stepped through the massive white flame door and instantly the air became suffocating. Not heavy, but sharp, like shards of broken glass piercing the spirit. The moment we entered, I heard it, a chilling silence that carried the weight of terror. Then a whisper, soft but horrifying. "I was always afraid of you, Mummy. I was always afraid of you, Daddy." I froze. The voice was small, yet it carried the force of 1,000 storms. Jesus looked at me with eyes that burned with sorrow. "Nadine, this chamber is for parents who ruled through fear, whose love was hidden beneath anger and intimidation. The spirits of fear they planted have now grown." Before me were men and women standing in a circle of shadows. But these were not ordinary shadows. They were twisted, dark extensions of themselves, mirroring the terror they inflicted on their children. A father raised his hand, and a small boy shrank away from it. A mother opened her mouth to speak, and her daughter flinched, covering her eyes. I watched in horror as every fearful moment replayed like a living nightmare. Every scolding, every harsh word, every violent look had been recorded in the hearts of the children. And now in this chamber, each memory became a fiery lash. One little boy appeared in front of his father, trembling. "I never wanted to be near you. I was afraid to breathe in your house." The father screamed as fire erupted beneath him, wrapping his legs like chains. He tried to reach for the child, but the boy's form was untouchable. Each step the father took brought him closer to flames that consumed him. Then I saw a mother kneeling, hands shaking. Her teenage daughter standing silently before her. The girl's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Every word you shouted, every threat you made, I carried in my heart, and now your fear follows you." The mother wept, falling to her knees, but Jesus whispered to me, "Fear is a weapon children cannot defend against. It shapes their soul, and it becomes evidence in the courts of eternity." I looked around and I saw hundreds of parents, all trapped, all tormented by the echoes of their children's fear. Some were crying, some screaming, all trying desperately to apologize, but the flames answered every plea with silence. A little girl stepped forward from the shadows, holding a broken doll. Her voice was gentle but cutting. "I grew up afraid of you, and now you will feel what it is to be afraid, forever." The fire around the parents flared, each flame shaped by the intensity of the child's terror. Jesus turned to me and said, "Nadine, many parents do not understand that fear is more deadly than neglect. It eats the soul, and it follows both parent and child into eternity." I wanted to cry out, to beg for mercy, but the sight was too heavy, too real. Finally, Jesus motioned toward a massive gate at the far end of the chamber. The shadows recoiled as it opened, and a new sound rushed toward us. A sound that was neither crying nor screaming, but pure judgment. He placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "The next chamber will reveal the parents who used manipulation and control, the ones whose love became a cage." My heart pounded in my chest. I had witnessed fear, but now I was about to see something far darker. And in that moment, I realized, hell does not forget a single tear, a single cry, a single moment of fear inflicted on a child. The moment we stepped through the next gate, the air changed again. It was thick, but not with fire or smoke this time. It was heavy with deceit. Jesus paused, his gaze fixed on the chamber ahead. "Nadine, this is the chamber of parents whose love was a cage, those who used manipulation, control, and intimidation to rule their homes. What the children endured here on earth, they carry into eternity." The door opened, and I saw it immediately. A vast hall dimly lit by a sickly green flame. Parents walked slowly, trapped in invisible chains, their faces twisted with fear, guilt, and confusion. Floating above them were translucent children. Not weeping this time, but staring with eyes filled with accusation. A mother raised her hands as if to embrace her child. But the girl's form darted away. A whisper followed, sharp and cutting. "Mommy, every time you told me to do something, it felt like I was trapped. I never learned to choose. I only learned to obey fearfully." The mother screamed, falling to her knees, but the child's voice echoed louder. "I obeyed you, but I grew up afraid, and I learned that love is never free." Nearby there, a father recoiled as a boy's voice floated like poison. "Daddy, every time you threatened me to get your way, you planted anger inside me. I hated your control, and now I hate what it made me become." The chains around the parents' legs tightened with every accusation. The hall echoed with a symphony of tiny voices, children revealing truths that parents had buried under manipulation and lies. Jesus stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chamber. "Many parents do not realize that discipline without love becomes a weapon. Guidance without mercy becomes a prison. And manipulation is a sin that the soul cannot escape." I turned and saw a mother walking slowly in a circle, her eyes fixed on a ghostly image of her daughter. The girl's hands were folded, but her eyes glowed with quiet anger. "Mommy, you told me to smile, to be polite, to please you, while my heart was breaking." The mother fell forward, the invisible chains tearing at her flesh. She cried out, "Forgive me, I never knew I was hurting you so much." Jesus shook his head gently. "You knew, you saw the fear, the pain, the submission, and yet you used it for your convenience, your pride, your control. This chamber is the result of every action that caged a child's heart." I felt a cold wind sweep through the hall. The children's accusations grew louder, sharper, unrelenting. A young boy appeared in front of a father holding a tattered book. He spoke calmly but with authority. "You controlled my every step, but you never taught me freedom. You built walls around my heart and called it love." The father screamed in agony as the chains constricted him further. Flames of sorrow erupted around him, but it was not the fire of hell. It was the fire of truth. Jesus turned to me, his face solemn. "Control disguised as love is one of the most dangerous sins a parent can commit. It crushes the spirit, stifles the soul, and becomes evidence against the heart in eternity." Then he pointed to the far end of the hall, where a massive blackened doorway loomed. The children's voices became a crescendo, screaming and accusing in unison. Parents who caged us pain now faced the freedom they stole. Jesus laid his hand on my shoulder, and I felt the weight of it, the heavy, unbearable weight of parental sin. "Nadine, The final chambers await. You have seen anger, neglect, and fear. But what is about to come will reveal the ultimate betrayal of children's innocence. My heart pounded. I knew then that what I had witnessed so far was only a fraction of the torment. And yet it had pierced me to the core. I could barely breathe as the blackened doorway swung open. From within came a sound unlike any other, not sorrow, not fear, but the pure, unrelenting truth of justice. The chamber of betrayal is next, where children confront the lies and secrets their parents carried. I swallowed hard, gripping Jesus' hand, my spirit trembling, because I understood one thing clearly. In hell, every child's cry becomes a witness, and every parent's sin is a flame waiting to consume them. We stepped through the last doorway. Immediately, a silence struck me, not the comforting silence of peace, but a heavy, judgmental silence that pressed against my chest. The air smelled of smoke and sorrow. A faint blue light illuminated a hall wider than anything I had seen. In the center stood a massive courtroom. The floor glowed like molten glass, and the walls were lined with angels holding quills and scrolls. Jesus turned to me, his eyes full of grief. Nadine, this is the chamber where every child confronts the sins of their parents. Every lie, every secret, every act of selfishness is revealed here. Before us, parents began to appear, some kneeling, some standing, all trembling. I saw familiar faces from the other chambers, their torment magnified, because now the witnesses were the children themselves. A small girl stepped forward. Her eyes, wide and bright, were filled with unspoken rage. She looked at her mother and whispered, "Mummy, you said you loved me, but you spent more time loving your pride, your anger, and your secrets. I watched you cheat. I watched you lie. I watched you betray my trust. And I kept silent, hoping you would see me. But you never did." The mother screamed. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The child's words became fire that wrapped around her like invisible chains, burning her from the inside. Nearby, a father crumpled to the floor. A boy no older than 10 stood before him. His voice was steady, sharp, and accusing. "Daddy, you told me men are strong and never cry, but you used that to hide your selfishness. You abandoned me when I needed guidance, and now I see the emptiness of your heart. Every time I asked for love, you punished me and called it discipline." The father fell silent, tears streaming down his face. Flames of truth danced around him, searing every hidden corner of his soul. I watched as after each testimony, the angels wrote every word in massive scrolls. The cries of children multiplied, voices overlapping, creating a symphony of accusation, so powerful it shook the very foundations of the chamber. Jesus leaned toward me, his voice almost breaking. "Nadine, every parent will answer for what they did and for what they allowed. Children's innocence is precious. Every tear ignored, every fear planted, every moment of betrayal becomes testimony in eternity." I saw another scene that made my heart shatter. A mother who had ignored her daughter's cries for years tried to approach her child in the courtroom. But the girl stepped back, holding her hand to her chest. "I trusted you once, and you failed me. Now, I will never be yours again." The mother fell to the ground, screaming silently as the flames of accusation consumed her completely. Jesus turned to me and said, "Parents often think the home is their kingdom. But the truth is, every child is an assignment from me, and those who misuse, neglect, or betray their children find their sins multiplied in eternity." I realized then that this chamber was not only about punishment, it was revelation. Parents could see their failures clearly, as the angels recorded every tear, every cry, every moment ignored. The children's voices were no longer small. They became thunderous. They became fire, wind, and light. They revealed every secret, every lie, every hidden sin. Jesus raised his hand, and the cries ceased immediately. A stillness fell over the chamber. He looked at me with eyes heavy with sorrow. Nadine, what you have seen today is only a fraction of what is recorded in heaven. If parents do not repent, these testimonies will confront them in eternity, and their tears will burn like fire. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed, the weight of what I had witnessed pressed on my soul. And Jesus whispered, "Go and tell the world, Nadine. Children are more than innocents. They are witnesses, and their cries will not be forgotten." As we left the chamber, I could still hear faint echoes. "Mummy, Daddy, why didn't you see me? I needed you, and you were never there." I understood fully. In hell, every child's tear, every cry of pain becomes testimony against those who ignored them on earth. And that truth shook me to my very core. The moment I stepped back through the final doorway, a crushing weight lifted from my spirit. But the memory of the chambers remained. Every scream, every cry, every flame was etched into my soul forever. I was back in my room. The soft hum of evening replaced the roaring voices of hell. But even in the quiet, I could still hear the faintest echoes of children crying, "Mummy, Daddy, why didn't you see me?" I fell to my knees, shaking, tears streaming down my face. I whispered to the Lord, "Jesus, I cannot bear the weight of what I have seen. How can parents survive this judgment?" Jesus knelt beside me. His voice was gentle yet filled with authority. "Nadine, many parents believe their mistakes are small. They think children forget, or that their actions do not matter. But every tear, every fear, every moment of neglect is recorded. And one day, it will speak louder than their prayers." He placed his hand on my shoulder and showed me a vision. I saw parents on earth carrying their children, some loving them, some ignoring them, some filled with anger. "The choices you make in the home," he said, "determine whether a child grows in freedom or in fear, in confidence or in shame, in love or in bitterness. Every child is an assignment from heaven, and heaven watches. Hell waits for the neglected, the fearful, the betrayed." I fell silent, overwhelmed. Then he whispered, "Tell them, Nadine. Tell every parent watching. Do not wait. Do not ignore the cries of your children. Do not believe discipline is enough. Love them fully. See them, hear them, guide them. Or one day, their tears will testify against you." I looked around my room, the reality crashing down on me. This was no dream. This was a warning, a glimpse into eternity. I thought of every child I had ignored, every moment I had failed to listen. And I begged for mercy, knowing the Lord sees what the heart cannot hide. Jesus said, "The truth is simple, Nadine. Parent well, love fully, or the cries of children will rise like fire, and no earthly apology will ever extinguish it." I felt his hand lift, and the room returned fully to quiet. The visions faded, but the warning remained. I understood then why the chambers existed. Fighting in front of children plants seeds of anger and trauma. Neglecting them emotionally leaves wounds that last forever. Raising them in fear chains their spirit. Manipulating or controlling them cages their hearts. Betraying their trust condemns them to bear the burden of truth, and all of these, left unrepented, become witnesses in eternity. I rose slowly, my body trembling. I could still hear the whispers of children, faint but persistent. "Why didn't you see me? Why didn't you love me?" I knew my mission: to warn parents everywhere, to tell them what heaven sees, what hell remembers, and what every child's tear will testify against if ignored. And as I speak this now, I pray every parent listening understands the weight of their actions. Do not wait. Do not ignore. Do not take lightly the cries of your children, because in eternity, every child becomes a witness, and every parent will answer.